recording the session tonight for families who aren't able to join us. I want to welcome family members for joining us this evening. Parents, I see some supporters of the school. I see teachers, school leaders. So I'm grateful to have everybody here tonight. And please, if you have questions along the way, please put them in the chat box. We'll either sort of get to them a little bit later this evening, or one of my awesome teammates will hop in and answer as well. So tonight, what we want to do is give you a bit of an update, sharing back feedback we've heard from our families through town halls and surveys, feedback we've heard from our students through town halls and surveys, as well as our teachers. Share a little bit of a conversation I had today with Mayor Walsh and Chief Martinez of the Boston Public Health Commission, and then share with you an updated hybrid model and get your reactions and feedback to that. So that is what we're going to do. And please, like I said, add questions in the chat box as we go. So it has been a busy summer here at school. I hope that many of you are finding moments amidst this challenging time to spend time with families and find, if possible, a moment to breathe and to restore. What we've been focused on at school is really 3 different models. And this is 3 models that the state has asked every school district in Massachusetts to prepare for. One is returning everybody in person to the building. One is a hybrid model where some are in the building and some are doing remote learning. And then the third is a fully remote model. And as we've talked about in past town halls, it's really important that we develop all of these plans, because we really believe that over the course of the school year, we might start hybrid, but then we might all need to be remote if something changes with the virus, and then we might be able to be hybrid. So we have to have all of our plans at the start of the year so that we can move between them, so that we don't have a situation like we had last spring where it was just an emergency and nobody had plans and we just went to remote. And so the Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, has said, I want you all to be planned. I want you all to be working. I want our kids to be in school, whether that's remote or hybrid. And that is the purpose of preparing in this way. That said, we are putting equity at the center of all 3 of these models. And the first people that we are wanting to hear from is all of you, our parents and our caregivers, because what you need, what you are caring about, we want to put at the center of the school design for our students and teachers and yourselves. Couple of things that we know to be true. So first is that we will embrace a set of strategies that when we use them together, no one in isolation, we can work to really minimize risk and keep the community healthy. So first is face coverings. We are requiring all students, all teachers, all visitors to the building to wear masks at all times. Physical distancing, we'll talk about it in a second. We're sticking with 6 feet. We're going on the high end of this range. This is based on your feedback. Hand hygiene, we'll be washing hands using hand sanitizer a lot. And we will be asking and we'll be looking to you all to help us that if your child feels sick, if one of us feels sick as a teacher, we will not come to school. And so really kind of, what might have been like, oh, push through, you don't feel so great, but go to school and see how it goes. We're actually going to be working to do something completely different, which is like, please stay home and learn remotely. In our last session, many parents asked about temperature checks at the door. We are in the process of looking into ordering some of those temperature check stations. Again, today I was in a meeting, public health is saying not to temperature check at the door. They're saying that new research is showing that temperatures and COVID don't always correlate. And so I know this is an area that our families have said is important to them. So we are going to continue down the path looking into that. And when we meet again in 2 weeks, we'll talk more about the temperature checks. I wanted to talk very specifically about some aspects of the building and some actions that we've taken, because I think knowing the space that we're going to be in when we're able to be in it and knowing that we're taking it seriously, I think is important for our students, our families, and our teachers. So first of all, at the top of everyone's mind right now is ventilation. So I want you to know that we are running our heating and our ventilation and air conditioning system 24/7. And it has been running that way now for over a month. And we have ordered and will be installing these MERS air filters, which are the top of the line air filters. So we'll be circulating the air 24/7 with the best filtration system that you can buy. With regards to bathrooms, we're making 3 shifts here. One is we're removing the hand dryers, so the electrical hand dryers, because they can spray droplets. So we will remove those, or I shouldn't say remove them, we'll turn off the electricity to them, keep them in the wall. We are installing contactless paper towel dispensers for students to use. We already have contactless soap and water in the bathrooms, and we have ordered and are installing foot openers. So rather than use your hand to open the bathroom door, you tuck your shoe into the foot opener and it pulls the door open for you, so you don't ever have to touch those things. In our classrooms, we'll be keeping our windows open, and we'll actually be removing the doors so that students can pass into those spaces without having to touch anything. And we'll have contactless hand sanitizer throughout the building, at the entrance to classrooms, common spaces. So hand hygiene will be a top priority. In our last session together, families asked about cleaning, cleaning things like handrails in hallways, cleaning the building. And I shared with you that we have a day porter, Alex, who works with us from 7 to 4 every day. We've hired a second day porter, so we'll have one person on each side of the building working from 7 to 4. They'll be cleaning the bathrooms regularly throughout the day, cleaning the handrails, hallways, common spaces, supporting breakfast and lunch delivery to classrooms. But we felt it was important that we sort of add to the team so that we have even more people able to help with health and wellness in the building. Additionally, one thing to note is, as I said, the physical distancing question. We asked our teachers, we asked our students, what distance do you want? The state said we could be between 3 and 6 feet. 65% of families and 65% of teachers said they wanted 6 feet. Interestingly, only 30% of the students said they needed 6 feet. They were more okay with a 3 to 6 foot range. But given the overwhelming majority of the community wants 6 feet, and we know that distancing and masks and hygiene when done together are our best defense against COVID, we are only moving forward with 6 feet. So there is no 3 feet, no 4 feet, anything in any of the Boston Prep plans. We are solely focused on 6 feet. And then with regards to, I see, Shanda, your question, will the windows be open during the winter? They are encouraging us to have the windows open during the winter and rainstorms and fresh air. And so we will, students will be allowed to wear, their sweaters and their sweatshirts and things of that nature, because we want to freeze the children out, but we do want to keep the windows open to circulate the air. Wanted to share just some feedback so you could hear, because we got feedback from families from a variety of places. Family number one, safety, particularly health, is their number one concern. 6 feet of distance, families said, is key. And our families also said that equity was really important to them. And what that meant was they wanted as much as possible for our grade levels to each have access to the building, to learning in person at a relatively equivalent rate, right? They didn't want to say something like 6th grade gets to come to school every day and 12th grade you get to come 1 day a week, right? And I think the best way I could say it is a parent on the last town hall said, you know, I'm a 6th grade parent. I'd be willing to have my child only come 4 days a week if it meant a senior could go to school 2 to 3 days a week, right? And so there was this really beautiful sense of equity from our families. Interestingly, that was really shared by our students. And so when we shared with them the models like we shared with you all, they said overwhelmingly, I'm interested in a week of middle school and a week of high school. And when we asked them, we said, why? They were like, because we all want to be in the building. We all want to learn with our teachers. And so what we learned in talking with students is they actually don't care if you do A weeks or B weeks or this day or that day. Really what they care about is that everybody has access to school and to students and to community building at roughly the same levels of time. That said, we did hear from everybody, families, students, and teachers, that 6th and 9th grades were the priority. 6th grade, given their age, given that they're new to Boston Prep, for families, certainly having the youngest students at school while families are working is most helpful. And for 9th graders, again, many new students join us in 9th grade and really wanting to set a great foundation to start off high school. You'll see that the students are the most comfortable with coming back to school. 85% of them are like, I'm ready, let's go, right? They miss their friends, right? They miss their teachers. They miss the opportunity to be in community with each other. And families and teachers are a little bit less certain. So as we've been working over the past couple of weeks, we've really been working on how do we make the building even safer? How do we make our plan even more equitable so that families and teachers and students all can get behind it? We know that health and safety is at the core, but you also, as families said, we want to make sure that we're equally focused on academics as much as we are social emotional learning. And so our school leaders and our teachers are going to be taking that, I don't even want to say dual goal, but an integrated focus on academics and social emotional learning in the year ahead. And so there are a couple of things that I just want to say we'll discuss at our next town hall, because they're still in development. So specifics, being able to share with you, what will we do if a student is sick? What will we do if a teacher is sick? What will a mask break look like? How will kids move from point A to point B in the building? And we'll talk about transportation. We're still waiting to get more information on that. And Mayor Walsh, who I met with earlier today, is convening all the charter leaders with the city's chief of transportation in 2 weeks. And so my hope is that will be right before the next time we talk together. So I want to make just some summary points, because I know there's a lot right now in the media, in particular, a lot of conversation about how do you decide if we're going to reopen. So number one, we will only open in a hybrid model if the virus rates remain low in Boston, right? And so Boston right now is nothing like Florida. It's nothing like Texas. It's nothing like Arizona. And in fact, today, Chief Martinez from Boston Public Health Commission shared that the current rate of infection in Boston is at 2%, and we've been under 3% for the past 8 weeks. And so they are reporting on this data twice a week, and they're gathering it every day. Specifically, we are looking at the positive test rate per day in Boston. We're looking at the number of new cases of COVID per day in Boston. The number of admissions, and not IC beds, oops, that's a typo, it should be ICU beds, intensive care unit beds in hospitals that have been used, in the ER activity per day in Boston. So Chief Martinez and Mayor Walsh said for the past 8 weeks, all of those have been trending down and are in a good position. So that has to continue to be true for us to open up school anywhere in the city of Boston. Additionally, we're requiring masks for everybody, everyone in the building, every student, every adult, every visitor. We've updated the ventilation system, as I said, that's critical path, ventilation and HVAC in any school. We've made necessary changes to our physical space to guarantee this 6 foot of distance. We've ordered and will keep ordering all of the PPE that we need at the school. I know there's been some confusion about, do schools have the money to buy PPE? We have been buying, we will continue to buy. We have prioritized and put aside the money to buy it. And we will also ensure that every student has a Chromebook, has a charger, and has the connectivity that he or she needs at home to facilitate learning both in the building and at home. And all of these things have to be true. And we feel very fortunate that we're in this brand new building that frankly has facilitated and allowed us to be comfortable with the setup for the days ahead. So that said, what does that mean for where we are? Last time I shared with you 3 models, and we've taken all of your feedback, and I want to share 2 ideas. So tonight, I just want to say officially, it is not possible for us to have 100% of our students back in the building at 6 feet of distance. So there is not a world at present with these requirements for us to have everybody back. Just off the table. And just want to say that again. Hybrid learning, some learning at home, some in the building is on the table. We want to talk with you about those options. And of course, we all know remote learning because we've been doing it. With regards to hybrid learning, we just wanted to share that there's 2 big investments that we've made as a school. One is we are doing construction work. We just got our bids today. We're starting construction and we're knocking down walls and we're making really big classrooms so that kids can spread out. So picture a classroom, multiply it by 2, and then we'll have about 24 students in those 2 rooms. Second big investment we're making is in technology. Today, Ms. Duran, Ms. Gregory, Ms. Callahan, Mr. Vanderzan, and myself, Mr. Swyke, the tech team, we did a demo of the technology. So we had some people in the room, we had others logging on through Zoom. And so this way, students at home can see the teacher's instruction, can hear their peers in the classroom. Because one of the things I heard from you all last time we spoke from families was, if I make the decision to have my child learn from home all year, will they have access to the same learning experience as the students who come to school? And so we have invested in this technology to make that possible, right? So the way to think of it is, if a teacher is having a class at 9 a.m. and some of the students are in the building and some of the students are learning from home, they'll all be going to that class at 9 a.m. and having the same experience and the same access to materials. And so I put a little slide in here so you could see, just when I say like construction, like what does that mean? So these red boxes actually represent a place where there's 2 classrooms and we're knocking down a room and making one big oversized classroom. And so this is a way that we can have our homerooms together, keep our kids 6 feet apart, and allow for the technology. So here are the 2 options. Last time we spoke, I heard from you all that one thing that's really helpful for families is if every week is the same, right? We talked about this idea of A weeks and B weeks and having to keep track of that. And what we heard from families was like, if every week's the same and you just tell me what's happening Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like that's easier to manage with work, with childcare, with school. So we built a model here. One version of the model has grades 6, 7, 9, and 11 coming to school 4 out of 5 days. And grades 8, 10, and 12 come to school 3 out of 5 days. So students learn in the building, or on their remote days, they do synchronous Zoom instruction with their teachers. So our students at Boston Prep, the plan is to go to school 5 days a week. And depending on your grade level, you spend 3 to 4 in the building and you do 1 to 2 of those remotely. So we came up with this idea because families and teachers and students said equity was most important. We tried to prioritize the grades that we heard from you were really important, particularly 6 and 9. And we had this idea that actually all students having some opportunity to practice remote learning before we're in a period where that's maybe all we do is actually a really helpful learning moment. And so you can imagine, I do a couple days in the building with my teacher, I do a day at home, and then the next day my teacher's able to give me some feedback on how did I engage in that remote learning. And then specifically some students with disabilities, particularly the most significant special education students will come to school 5 days a week. So that's one version. And then the second version is similar, but it says that 6th grade comes to school 4 days a week and every other grade level comes to school 3 days a week. So very similar. The difference here is that we have a few less students in the building and we have much, like almost a higher degree of equity because grades 7 through 12 are the same and only our youngest learners, our 6th graders, are in 4 days a week. So again, both models really allow us to think about equity as we heard from families, let us prioritize certain grades, let us all practice remote learning. And then the final thing I'll say before I open it up to questions and your feedback is what does the bell schedule look like? So our plan is to open school at 7 and then each class happens on the hour. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, and 2, and we dismiss at 3. So the only difference between learning at home and learning in the building is that in the building, you start class at 8 and at 8:45 class ends and there's a 15-minute break period, right? You get a chance to stretch, you get a chance to have your movement break. We have the extra minutes to have a really thoughtfully planned out trips to the bathroom. Maybe students listen to music, maybe you read a book. You know, it's just moments for students to kind of decompress. And similarly, then from 8:45 to 9 for students at home, they get a Zoom break, right? And they get some downtime on the computer, and that felt really important. And similarly with lunch will be in classrooms, but we've also left time in that hour for things like advisory or clubs or for students who might want some quiet time to do some reading. So again, we're trying to create some flexibility in this particular model. And all of this together has kids on the computer about 4.5 hours in the day when you take out the breaks and lunch. And we really feel that that's like the maximum amount of Zoom time for kids. But we really like this idea that it's the same when we're hybrid and the same when we're remote, so you can kind of go back and forth. The one change which you'll note is that we are going to do this schedule Monday through Thursday, opening the building like 7:15, 7:30, wrapping everybody out by 3:30. On Fridays, when we're hybrid, students will do a half day, dismissing between 12 and 12:30, and then teachers will do afternoon professional development. But at the time of the year when we might all be remote, so all learning is happening through the computer, Fridays will look a lot like they did in the spring. Students will have advisory or clubs Friday morning, and then Friday afternoons will be teacher PD. So the one kind of difference is that when we're in a hybrid model, students will have a half day of classes on Friday, and when we're fully all remote, their Friday will be their advisory time and their check-in time. So that's where we're at. That's the feedback we've heard. Those are the two models that we've heard that we wanted to share with you, and we're really interested in your feedback. Do you like one model over the other? What else is on your mind? How are you feeling about the steps we've taken to promote health and safety? We just sort of wanted to open it up. So I will open it up there, and as we do, we'll also check back in the chat and see if we've missed anything. Anyone want to share first?
Hi, Sharon. It's Jen Walter.
Hi, Ms. Walter.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I just have a question
Mm-hmm.
regarding both models.
Yep.
So, how is that going to work, especially for seniors? I feel as though it's their last year, and I understand the younger kids, the sixth and ninth graders need to be in school. Probably more for like 4 days, which I totally get. But I feel as though seniors should also be in school at least 4 days. The reason why I'm saying that is because they're prepping for college, they're doing essays, they need to meet one-on-one with their college advisor. So how will that work for seniors?
Yep. Yep. That's a great question, Ms. Walter. So two things at that point. One is we've been working with Mr. Canto and Ms. Dewey and Ms. Fonts in the college counseling office. And we're going to be working on meeting with students and their families one-to-one, be that virtual or be that when they're in the building. So it may work for seniors, and we're working on the details right now, that classes end for them around 3 o'clock, but they may have a meeting with their college counselor from 3:30 to 4.
Okay.
Right. Or Ms. Dewey might say, hey, Naya, I'd really like to meet with you and Goodness and Rubens because you have an interest in schools in the Midwest, and we're going to meet from 3:30 to 4 because I want to share with you three these 5 colleges. So we're gonna work on the specifics of that over the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Other thing we've talked about, to be completely honest, Ms. Walter, is like, okay, let's imagine it's January now, right? It's second semester.
Mm-hmm.
And our seniors are approaching their advanced placement exams.
Yep.
Or our juniors are approaching their MCAS exams because they're a year.
Right.
In the second semester, 6th grade might go down to 3 days a week. So our 11th and 12th graders can increase to 4 days a week.
Okay.
So we want to open this way through like semester 1, see how we go. But then as the virus shifts and as students' academic needs shift based on time of year, we may modify who has the 3 days versus who has the 4.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I have a senior, about to be senior at home too, Ms. Walter. So I know how weird this is to have at this age.
Exactly. Thank you again.
You're welcome. I think I see Vanessa has a hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My son, this will be his first year coming to the school.
Awesome, welcome.
Thank you. And is it going to be possible for him and I to be able to come to see the school, to see how y'all got things set up?
Yes, that is a great question. Yes, we are working right now. Our teachers are coming back to school August 17th for 3 weeks. So 15 days of professional development. And so we're working to figure out in those days right now when students might be able to come, how we might be able to show you what the school looks like if you're unable to get there. So we will have moments like that at the end of August, early September for students and families. And I failed to mention, I'm sorry, our first day of school is Tuesday, September 8th.
Right. I have one more question.
Of course.
What plans have they made for transportation?
Mm-hmm. So we don't, at Boston Prep, we don't do transportation on our own. The city does the yellow school buses and supports the Mbta. So that is the meeting that we're hoping to have in 2 weeks with Mayor Walsh to learn more about where busing stands. I also should mention, and I've got some next steps here that I'll just put up. We are, where did I put it here? We are actually contracting right now to see about doing our own private busing for our 6th graders and for any of our 7th through 12th graders who have door-to-door transportation. So typically we rely on the city to help us, but we are looking at privately sort of purchasing busing as an alternative, so that we can have the right number of buses, ensure students are spread out, and make sure they get to school on time. So I'll provide an update on that August 12th, and I imagine we'll have another update end of August, because this is an evolving situation for us.
One last question.
Mm-hmm.
The previous two schools that my son has been in, they had cut the budget for cleaning the school.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope people don't get mad or whatever, but my whole thing is, what is y'all standard for cleaning?
Yep, that's a great question. We have not cut the budget on cleaning. We've actually increased the budget for cleaning. So we have 2 people that work in the building from 7 to 4 every day cleaning for us. And then we have a team of 5 to 7 people who clean every night, classrooms and common spaces. And 1 to 2 times per week, we use this electrostatic fogging machine, which is an additional cleaning tool. And then we do an even deeper clean at December, February, and April vacation periods. So we actually made some other reductions in costs in other places so that we would have the money to pay for cleaning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Yes.
So as far as things like speech, if a child does that, how will that?
Yeah. So it will work in 1 of 2 ways. So I mentioned how we are creating these big classrooms, right, by taking down the walls so a homeroom can be in there. We also have classrooms that are a typical size, and so a student could meet with Ms. Ma, who's our speech pathologist, in that room, only 2 people, and be spread out. Same thing with OT, physical therapy, ABA services, counseling. And so we'll either be doing it in that kind of setting, or some of those sessions will happen remotely. And we actually found that some of our students preferred the remote setting for some of those services, some did not. And so we'll use a mixture. But Ms. DeBarros, who's the head of special education, will work with us and all of the students and teachers to make sure that all of those services are in place.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Can I see model A, please? Yes. Okay. So this is model A. And the main thing here with model A is that 4 grades are at 4 days a week and 3 grades are at 3 days a week. And so the only difference with model B is that 6th grade is the only one that's 4 days a week, and then every other grade level is 3. Someone's asking, Ms. Burnett is asking, is there an option to keep my child home if you don't feel comfortable with the hybrid model? Absolutely. Every family is allowed, able to make the decision about where you want your child to learn next year. Hybrid, if we're open for that, or if you want your child to stay remote all year, that is completely up to each family. And so we are, we've sent a survey to gather some of that information already, and we'll be sending another survey tomorrow. So please just add your name to that if that is something that you would like to do. So, temperatures and screenings are required daily at clinics. It's true. And, you know, in fact, one of the questions we had asked about last time was masks, right? Will students bring their own masks or will the school provide? We have 2,000 masks and a washing machine on campus. And so we'll be having masks available, clean masks every day. You are welcome to bring your own mask. But I kind of like, when I go to the hospital, they make me take my mask off and put on a new one. And the doctors at the Chan School of Public Health said that as a school where the people in the school themselves are already compromised, they don't have an illness or something, we don't have to do the same kind of screening, check, change of mask that you might do in the hospital setting. So they are saying that we would like you to ask a set of questions about how do you feel before you come to school, and wear the mask, keep the distance, do the hand hygiene. And so that's the counsel that we've been having.
So with every kid, every student is going to be different. Even now, with many complaints about wearing the mask outside, I foresee a lot of the kids putting the masks on. Is there a type of punishment or not punishment, what are you going to do? Because it's going to be really hard, even at the hospital where I am right now, I can take it off constantly. What's going to happen if kids can't keep it on, for any health reasons or, allergies or something like that? Like, what's going to happen? Because I can see, even walking around, people, even in the hospital, still don't wear it all the time.
Yeah.
So I know it's going to be really difficult for the kids to keep it on. Now, are you requiring surgical masks, or can they have cloth masks? They have to be a certain color?
They can, the masks can be cloth masks. They can be kind of the disposable masks. The ones that we bought are cloth masks, actually our school mascot, the Phoenix on them. So we know that this is going to be challenging. And so we're working on developing the protocols for mask breaks, right? So students will stay kind of far apart and have available mask breaks. We're also looking to buy different types of masks because we know that for facial sensitivities, right, different things will feel better or worse for kids. So sometimes, you might be taking it off, but we could find another one that fits you better. So we're going to try to problem solve with students. And then if we need to, we'll problem solve with families as well, right? So what and how can we make this work? And if it got to a point where it was not, for whatever reason, safe for students, right? We have other spaces in the building where a student can go and kind of have a moment, take a break, have a conversation, and then go back to class, we hope. So we won't have young people not wearing masks and then making that a riskier environment for their peers. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is actually talking with students and teachers and families about making commitments to one another. And, kind of talking about well, why are we wearing masks? Why are we keeping distance, right? And it's not just about us, but it's about the people you live with at home, right? And it's about keeping our community and the broader community as healthy as we can. But we know that's going to be an ongoing dialogue. And if folks have ideas about that, let us know. But we definitely want to, not get into a place where you don't have a mask, it's a punishment, right? That's a tough place for us to be right now. And instead we want to really talk about how the masks help us keep the community safe. So. Someone is asking, how will traveling through the halls and lockers work? So there are no lockers next year in middle school or high school because lockers are by their nature too close physically to meet those requirements. And so all of our students will have their Chromebooks, and even when you're in the building, your materials will be electronic so that we can again keep things contactless. So we're hopeful that will make it so that students aren't carrying as many items as you typically would. So we'll have a place in classrooms for backpacks. Husband, I'm required to wear a cloth.
Ms. Lazansky, I'm a little late tuning in.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm Joshua and Jakai's mom. How are you?
Yes, good.
I'm
nice
so
to see
sorry.
you.
So I'm a little late, and I haven't been able to catch up with what's going on. But my understanding under the CDC guidelines were that there will be some virtual classes as well as in school classes. Is Boston Prep following those guidelines?
Mm-hmm. So we will either be in a hybrid model, which means some kids will be in the building on, let's say, Tuesday, and some kids will be learning remotely at home on Tuesday. Or we'll be in a model where everybody's learning remotely at home on Tuesday because the virus is in a place like it was in March where we know we need to be home. So our plan is to really make sure we balance, so that, on Tuesday, these grades come to school, these grades are at home. On Wednesday, these grades come to school, these grades are at home. On Thursday, these grades come, these are at home, and so on. And so the two models that we shared today are, one option has 4 grades coming in 4 out of 5 days, remote on one, and the other grades are 3 days in the building, 2 at remote, versus the other option is 6th grade is in 4 days a week, once at home, and all of the other grades are in 3 days a week and twice at home. I think one of the most important things for us is that when we're at home, kids are going to be following their schedule as if they were in the building. And that's one of the biggest shifts from the spring. So kids will follow their schedule like they typically would. They'll log in, it's synchronous, they'll see their teachers. And that way, if a family does want to keep their son or daughter home for the year, they can do that, and all the kids will be able to easily follow the same schedule.
Okay, so with me having a senior this year, will the work be more rigorous and more kind of mandatory to be in school, or that's
Yes,
important
yes.
for me to know right now.
No, absolutely. So in the spring, it was sort of credit, no credit, right? And students who came and did the work, and we did an honors pass. When we start in the fall, students will be getting grades, A, B, C, D, F, like they typically would.
Okay.
We're taking attendance every day, and teachers will be doing even more feedback on student work and communication with you. And that was something that today the Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, said to all the superintendents in Massachusetts. He said, I'm expecting the fall to look very different than the spring. And so that is something that we're going to be working with, kind of sharing with students in advance. Hey, this is different. You need to show up. Now, if students are sick, if they're caring for someone at home that's sick, if there is some other reason that they're unable to show up at class, we just need you to communicate with us, and then we will make the learning available at other times so that students can access the learning. So we also, in saying that, completely recognize that this is a very challenging and unique moment for a lot of reasons. And so we will work with every family to find that individualized plan. With regards to the uniform, so we have made some shifts in the uniform. And so I'll speak a little bit to middle school and to high school. So in the middle school, we've just expanded the colors of pants that students can wear: khaki, black, gray pants, still a Boston Prep polo shirt. But we're being a little bit more flexible on the shoes. We're not making you tuck that shirt into a belt. And for really a couple of reasons. We didn't want, and we're going to provide those 2 Boston Prep polo shirts to students, not knowing how many days we're going to be in the building. We didn't want families to have to spend money on uniforms that might not get worn as frequently. We wanted there to be some flexibility, some acknowledgement of that, and really wanted students to focus on the masks, right? And so, sometimes students complain about, I don't want to tuck in my shirt, I don't want to wear these shoes exactly, and we understand that, and so we've made a little bit of flexibility there. On the high school, we're moving forward with a little bit more of a broader dress code. And really that's in part for the reasons I just mentioned about middle school, but also in preparation for students as they head towards college and they head towards work. So again, students can wear black, khaki, or gray pants. They can wear the Boston Prep button down, long sleeve, short sleeve, cardigan, but they can also wear other collared button down shirts. And again, some shoe flexibility. And so that is a bit of a shift for us, but one that we think is kind of important in our pandemic reality, and also, frankly, as students begin to think about the transition from high school into college. So there is a dress code. It's just not all totally uniform. So.
Okay, one more question. I'm sorry.
Yep.
So do you think it's realistic for us to have, for the students, just an overall dress code for their online presentation, because, we don't want students waking up in their jammies doing online classes, and, do you think it's ideal for them to still be presentable and carry that same, presentation, whether or not they're doing the virtual learning? Will that be a requirement? I mean, me personally, I think it should, because it kind of keeps in line with, Boston Prep's mission and, the presentation. And so will that be a requirement? Like if they were doing virtual learning, will that be a requirement for them to still be in Boston Prep form?
That's a great question. And Ms. Cousin, let's come back to that in 2 weeks, because I'll bring it to the principals and assistant principals. And because I don't want to speak out of turn, but I will note that. Ms. Duran, if you could just grab that question, we'll come back to that.
Okay, that's fine, because I think, now is an awesome time to let parents know so that they can be prepared. Because I actually called the College Hype today, and they were kind of unsure whether or not they should order out for Boston Prep this school season. And I didn't have a definitive answer on whether or not that they should, but that's something I think that we should know sooner than later,
Yep. And so in terms of, we'll figure out the sort of in-person versus remote. For middle school students, we're going to provide 2 polos. We will provide those to every middle school student, so families do not have to buy that. And we wrote that to middle school families. High school students, because there's more options in terms of top that's available, families are welcome to wear the yellow button down or any other collared button down, but nobody should feel that they have to go to College Hype and buy any particular uniform parts. And absolutely do not buy any gym uniforms, no sweats, no t-shirts. And so we'll circle back. A couple of other questions is PAPE is put in here. So Chromebooks will go back and forth between school and home. So we used to use them in the building and cart them. They're just going to go back and forth to facilitate that learning for students. We are working on the school calendar right now. I know for certain we are starting September 8th. And we are going to be making some modifications. For example, I just heard today from the mayor that he'd like us to close school on election day, because many schools in the city are used on election day. So I know, for example, that has to be a fully remote day for us. So we're gonna work on that calendar and be getting that to you. Looking here. With regards to people testing positive and things, we'll talk about that in 2 weeks. We'll know a lot more, but we will communicate with families. We will quarantine. We will have students learning from home. So we'll talk more about that. Will we be selling the branded masks to students? Ms. Duran, if you could put that on the question list too. I don't know. I know that we have them to be used. Breakfast and lunch. Those will be in our classrooms. So we'll be bringing students breakfast and lunch in their rooms. We are still working on how we'll be getting breakfast and lunch to students that are learning remotely, either all year or in the hybrid model. And so the state has put in for some waivers, and it's my deep hope that you'll be able to get food at the closest school to your home and or at Boston Prep. And so we're working on those details. With regards to arrival and dismissal, we'll talk a little bit more about that again in 2 weeks when we meet, but around the building, there's actually 5 different entry points in the front and in the back of the building. And so the general idea is that we will assign grade levels, certain entry and exit points so that it is staggered. And we will mark out on the ground 6 feet of space so that students, while they're waiting to come in or go out, are distanced. But we will talk a lot more about those logistics when we are next together. Ms. Duran, I'm also seeing someone saying that we should talk about students showing their face when they're online in class. I know that's something you and Ms. Gregory, I see you nodding and smiling, have been talking about. Ms. Gregory's snapping, so we'll talk more about that in 2 weeks as well. Someone's asking if you start in person but you later want to change. That is absolutely possible. You have every right to do that. What we think we're going to do is when you choose to choose remote, we're going to ask you to do that for a few weeks so that way we know that we can expect that. But if you're in the building and you want to go remote, just let us know and we will note that for students. Yes, you can still wear those Boston Prep polos. That is totally welcome. Wendy, I see your note. Please send me an email and I will get you in touch with the right person about the uniform reimbursement. Will we still have Bianca wants to know if we're gonna have dress downs on Fridays. We'll have to see middle school and high school what that's gonna be. Yes, anyone who's purchased the uniform parts, please just email me directly. You all have my email. So the eating in classrooms, so the purpose of eating in classrooms is that the classrooms will be set up with 6 feet of distance. And so you need to have a mask on anytime you're within 6 feet of distance. So the goal is for students to be seated in their assigned seats, lunch is delivered to them, and then they stay seated and eat. And that way we're really managing the space and distance for eating, and then masks back on.
Thank you. Can I just ask
Before
a question? I'm sorry.
Of course, Ms. Walter, go ahead.
How many children, how many students will be to a classroom?
So each classroom's a little bit different based on their size, but in general, our classrooms are 750 square feet and we have 25 students in a classroom. So next year, the average classroom will be 1,500 square feet, so
okay.
Twice the normal size, and we will max that at about 25 students in the class. That said, I don't think we'll ever have 25 students in the class because
Right.
some students in every homeroom or grade level are going to choose to be at home. So I think 20 to 23 is probably closer to what you could imagine in a room that has a capacity in normal times of 50 and in COVID times about 25 to 30 students.
Okay. And just one other question. The last town hall, this was talking about the masks. Now, I know you said the school has ordered masks that have the Boston Prep logo, and I know at the first town hall, it was mentioned that the masks will be distributed, but would be collected back at the end of the day where they can be washed. And I know some parents weren't, their question was, well, will the child get the same mask? And you mentioned, no, they won't. Has there been any more talks about that? Are we looking to just distribute a mask to each child and then they're responsible for them to take home and wash and, to bring back to use on a daily basis? And and if that's the case, will the school have additional masks just in the event that a child forgets to bring theirs, on that particular day?
Yep. So on any given day with about 4 grade levels in the building, we would have at most about 400 students in the building, assuming everybody was there. And we have 2,000 of these masks available. So we have roughly 4 to 5 masks for every student and adult that we expect to be in the building. So those will be cleaned every night and students are able to use them. I can't guarantee that it will be the same mask, right? But I can guarantee would take it off, put it in a dirty laundry hamper, we'll wash it, and the clean ones will go up the next day. If you do not want to use one of those cleaned masks, families and students are welcome to bring their own masks. So it's up to families. I had originally thought maybe 2 weeks ago that you might have to trade out a mask, like in the hospital setting. But
Right.
all the folks at the public health school said either our laundered masks or families' own laundered masks would be best. And
Okay.
take up this question about whether or not we weren't planning to give everybody a mask for the
Right.
year, but to have them available if students needed them.
Okay. Thank you. No, that was just basically just a follow-up because I know it was a takeaway.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm sort of curious from other families, and maybe you could put in the chat box or share. Do you have any preference for Model A or B, or any thoughts about transportation that you'd want to share? How you're thinking about getting your kids to school? Love any feedback.
Yes, I have a question. So our daughters are gonna be in 11th and 7th, and looking at Model B, it seems as if there's only one day that they both be in school together. And as a mom of those two ages and a 1-year-old, I'm just thinking, like, you know, as I even get ready for my own, I'm not even back fully at my job and everything yet. Just thinking, how is this gonna work? You know, because ideally in my head, when I was thinking, for some reason, I'm like, yep, the girls are gonna be going to school 2 or 3 days a week and they'll be going together. But then looking at this model, I'm kind of sitting here biting my nails, like, what's gonna happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we are looking at that. I think we would have ideally loved to be like, oh, we have siblings only in 7th and 11th grade, and then put all the 7th and 11th graders in on the same days. But we actually have sibling relationships in nearly every combination of grade levels between grades 6 through 12. So we are going to go back in and look again and try to put as best as we can the grade levels that have the most sibling overlap in as much as we can the same days. But it will not be perfect. And I apologize for that. That said, as we sort of, you know, finalize which of these we might go with, and you look at it and you say, hey, this is the challenge my family's facing. Let's be in conversation, because for individual students or individual family needs, we can likely make an accommodation either from more remote or more in person. So let's definitely chat. And Ms. Pape, let's put that as a potential question in our survey, so that we can get that information from families.
Thank you. And can you just show us Model A again, please? Because
Of course.
I've been looking at Model B for a while now. Thank you.
Yep. This is Model A. And Model A prioritizes 6th and 7th, the youngest kids in the school, 9th as the newest high school students, and then 11th grade, because our 11th, soon to be 11th graders were supposed to take MCAS as 10th graders, which is their graduation requirement, and it got moved to 11th grade this year. So we prioritized 11th for that reason. And then, like I said, in Model B, only 6th grade is in 4 days a week. Everybody else is in 3.
Thank you.
Miss Lusinski, so my son, he received transportation through BPS for medical reasons. But I also thought that it was my understanding that they're only able to receive it for the first year. So will I be able to apply for him for transportation for this year?
So you are correct that the city provides busing for all 6th graders. And then they also take some select waivers from families, so requests for kids that are in the older grades. And then also students on IEPs that have door-to-door as part of their IEP. So if you want to reach out to Ms. Torrey, Lucy Torrey, who handles the busing, she can talk with you about that. So we are, with the city, working on that same busing plan that we've always had, and also exploring busing those same exact students in the private busing option that I was mentioning earlier. And we're trying to figure either one or both of those out.
Okay, thank you.
And I see the request here for the models to be sent. Tomorrow, we're going to be sending a summary of this meeting, access to the recording, and a survey. And so that will go to everybody tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that to go out. Danielle raised her hand. Sorry. Hi, Danielle. I think you might be on mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, last year when my daughter started there, the school provided the supplies and I sent in the money to cover the cost. Will that be the same this year, or will you all send a list of things that they need per grade?
Mr. Rand, can we add that to the question list? My hypothesis is that we won't have the same supply list this year because of everything coming electronically through the Chromebook. But let me double check that with our principals and assistant principals, and we will get that included in one of our next family newsletters.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I know we are past 7 o'clock, but I will stay on and take additional questions. But please feel free to hop off or stay on. And thank you all so much for coming. And I see it seems like people are a little bit more interested in Model B from today. So keep sharing anything in the chat box. And thank you for your time and happy to stay and answer additional questions. Will grades be given out the same, or would they have a bit of a compromise considering the change? Grades will be given out the same as normal. We had a little bit of a break from that in the spring, but back to normal grading in the fall. So you're welcome. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your feedback. So curious as to who's implementing for students who choose. Oh, I see. So this is a question from the Gonzalez family. So one of the things that we've been trying to sort of avoid is a world where teachers teach to the students in front of them, and then they have to post and have other work online, right? And that's sort of like a two separate, very much two separate gigs. So what we are trying to do is instead kind of have the classroom, have students that are in the room. And what we demoed today was imagine a teacher's computer plugged in with a second screen and a camera and audio and sound. And so the teacher is seeing the kids in Zoom right in front of them as they look out at the whole class. So it's like the first kid you see in a seat is a Zoom screen, and then you see the actual kids in the room behind you. And then they have a wireless remote that is set to 2 settings. And so they can hit a button and the camera zooms in on the board so the students at home can see what the teacher's doing, or they can zoom it out and see the teacher kind of walking and circulating. And then when the teacher says, hey, could you do some work now on problem 3, and the teacher maybe starts to circulate, they can put the whole class on mute so nobody gets disrupted. So all that said, there is a question still outstanding of like, if we know 30% of kids are gonna stay home and 70% are gonna come in the building, might we actually wanna make one classroom the remote room where a teacher gets really good at that technology and in the other rooms they don't? We're not sure, but because we think some kids might be in and out of the room all year, health, work, who knows, might be the reason, we're putting the technology in all the rooms right now while we work that out and see what the numbers are. So that's a bit in flux, but one of the things we heard from families last time was like, if I want my child to learn from home, I don't want them to have to do everything asynchronously. I don't want them to be teaching themselves and not learning with their peers. So we're gonna try this route. And it's our hope that it's actually a little bit less work for teachers and more engaging for students. So.
Thank you. That's really good.
Welcome. It's nice to see you. It's a welcome surprise.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, of course.
I wanted to start off with a comment too. Just looking at the thought process that went into trying to open up the school, I just want to say I appreciate that, because the number one thing right now, a lot of parents are fearful of sending their kids into school with the unknown of how the school's going to clean, how the school's going to make sure my child is safe, and how the school's going to make sure that they keep the kids accountable for what's implemented. So I feel that you guys have put a lot of thought into the scheduling, and as well as you just mentioned, simultaneously teaching kids virtually as well as those in the classroom, so they're not missing anything and they can continue to learn with their peers. I do have a couple of questions, and I think you're going to address some of it, but dismissal was asked, but also you mentioned arrival. Just want to, if you guys can outline what that looks like, and are you looking for families to provide you with whether or not they're choosing they're choosing to learn remotely 100%? So you have an idea of how many kids will actually be attending the school, and that can possibly drive pick up and drop off, because you'll know how many kids are going to physically be in the building at any time.
Yes, yes. So with regards to that, we sent a version of that survey, like, do you think you want to learn remotely? I guess about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we heard from about 30 people. But we know, as everything, like every couple of weeks, we're all in a different place, right, with what we're thinking about. And so we're going to send that same survey tomorrow, and we're going to keep sending it. And we're actually going to start in August having some of our team members call individual families to confirm. Do you want to be remote? Do you want to come back, so that we do have those numbers right? So when you see that survey tomorrow, please feel free to hop in, even if you've done it already. If you don't remember if you did it, anyone is welcome to do that. With regards to arrival, we are planning in the same way for dismissal to have grade levels arrive through one of the 5 doors with spacing. And so the process, sort of as we kind of drafted, and this is, draft right now, is students are 6 feet apart. They approach through the door. No shaking of hands anymore. We don't do anything like that. But we register the student as attended. The student gets hand sanitizer. They walk immediately to their classroom. More hand sanitizer at their classroom door. They go in and sit down at their pre-assigned desk, and someone brings them breakfast. So it will be a pretty organized entry, like sort of like, I imagine, like, just like much more orderly than you would imagine, like students arriving right at school normally, a little bit more linear by its nature. So
I had another question regarding the mask, and you mentioned essentially the kids borrowing the mask and that they would give it back and you guys would wash it. Do you think that defeats the purpose? That means that at a given time, the student will no longer have a mask. So does that defeat the purpose of having children have masks on 100% of the time that they're around another child?
So they would exchange their mask at the door when they're 6 feet away from another student. So a student is required to wear a mask on buses going to and from school, on the property. So when a student, let's say, if we gave a student a mask and they didn't have another one to put on, they would like take that mask with them, or we would give them a disposable mask for traveling home. So we will not kind of take our mask back and then have you be maskless, so to speak. But we do know that some students will wear a certain mask to come, and they may choose that they want the Boston Prep mask for the day, give that back to us, and then as they leave, put their mask back on. So we're going to be making some videos as to what this process might look like. Ms. Pape's on the call tonight. She'll help us with that. And so we'll be emailing those to families, posting them on websites so that we all kind of learn these habits and healthy habits together.
Okay. And my last question is, how often are you proactively reevaluating this plan of the hybrid and classroom learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that was the question we asked Mayor Walsh today and Chief Martinez, which was like, okay, what is the number? When the number in the city is X, or when the number at a school is Y, when do we go to 100% remote? And they don't have the number for us yet. So that is top of mind for us. And it will be something, as I mentioned, the number one thing we're paying attention to is the virus in the city and obviously at the school. And so as soon as we know those numbers, we will communicate what that is so that families have a sense of how that decision is being made. We're really looking to the public health officials here in Boston and to the mayor so that we're in lockstep, right? I think there's can be lots of different versions of a hybrid model. That's one thing, but there shouldn't be lots of different versions for how we're treating the virus from a health perspective. And so once we have a sense of that, we will share back out what they are thinking and how we will adhere to it.
Thank you.
Hi, Sharon. This is Shanda, Phelan's
Shanda.
mom. I have a question. With the IEP, right? So are they going to reevaluate the IEPs to incorporate what is going on with the school? Like, for instance, Phelan has something in his IEP where, you know, if he gets tired, like he can get up and like, you know, maybe walk to the window or something like that. So now where the kids have to stay in their seat and they're 6 feet apart, is that gonna reflect in his IEP? Maybe Monica can answer it, but I didn't know if you would answer it. I mean, I'm sure she's gonna have a meeting for all the IEP parents, but I just wanted to know if you knew that, you know, seeing that you guys have, you know, come up with, you know, which I think is some great ideas, but also just thinking about, you know, the things that he has that, you know, helped him, you know, get through his day in learning.
Yes. No, Ms. Brown is talking about students who might have breaks as part of their IEP or different movement kind of strategies built in. Ms. Brown, I don't know the exact answer to that question, so I don't want to speak turn. But Ms. Duran, could you grab that question down too, and we'll make sure to talk to Ms. DeBarros and also make sure, Ms. Brown, that there is a special education PAC, Parent Advisory Committee meeting here in August. So we'll get one of those.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Oh, Ms. DeBarros is on the phone. I didn't even see you there.
I didn't even know she was on there either.
Monique, if you want to chime in, go for it.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. We've been actively working all summer and staying aligned with DESE's guidance around special education. And so similar to how every August teachers review students' IEP to kind of review the student needs across the grade levels, we'll be doing that again this year. We will also be paying close attention to see if there are any accommodations that could be impacted or interrupted because of COVID regulation, and will help to find some alternatives. So for the example you gave, there'll probably be some kinesthetic activities that we can do for the students. It will be individualized, so we'll be working with family and students to kind of help to make the plan work. And then special educators will work with teachers to help to communicate that. So yes, we're going to kind of be flexible and adaptive as we go, but if there are any concerns that you have or if your child raises them, please let us know. Because we want to be as prepared as possible.
Thank you, Monique.
I have another question in regards, because I know you said that the lockers are not going to be used in the school, in the classrooms. So what, let's say, imagining that the students come with their backpack that has a Chromebook and whatever else they might have in there, maybe their sanitizer, mask or something, where would they be putting these items once they're in the classroom, please? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. the tentative plan and what we've talked with folks about is actually having backpacks and tucking them under students' chairs in classrooms. That's been what's been recommended to us. One of the high school students was like, bring back cubbies, we want cubbies. And cubbies kind of defeat the purpose of not having the lockers actually, because they'd be kind of stacked up. So that's how we're thinking about it. But that's also a question. We have a group of teachers and school leaders that have been meeting since April every week on the plan. And we have some huddle groups, some even more specialized groups meeting right now. And one is on systems and procedures. And this is one of the procedures that we are working through. But for now, what we've been telling kids is like, imagine sticking your coat in your backpack and then putting your backpack tucked under your seat so that it keeps things around you clear. So, Vanessa, I see your hand. You're welcome.
Ms. Lazansky, I'd like to know, in terms of, the overall well-being and mental health of the students, will there be any type of physical activity this year? Because as we all know, that's an important part of our overall well-being, and the kids have kind of been cooped up in the house, and I know you guys got the gym and that kind of sort of thing, and what plans do you have for physical activity? I think that will greatly enforce their mental abilities this year. We're getting through everything and all the changes, and the social distancing, them being away from their peers and that kind of thing. I think that's really important. Have you guys talked about how you would incorporate any type of physical activities or sports or
Yep. So right now, Commissioner Riley, who's the head of education, when I was on a call with him today as well, he has not made a decision about sports. And I will just say, in complete honesty and transparency, I think he is very hesitant about sports, given obviously, even soccer, right? There's close physical contact in a sport like that. And so I think we're very concerned about that, but we know the importance of movement and being around. So as I was sharing the bell schedule, I was mentioning that there are going to be these 15-minute breaks and some break with lunchtime. And so one of the things we're working on is what is the rotation that on those breaks could get kids outside and be physically distanced, or potentially into parts of the gym and be physically distanced and at least, be able to do jumping jacks, be able to sort of do push-ups, run around, kick a ball back and forth, but not touch it. Are there videos that Mr. Alves could post online so that students can do exercises at home, whether that's yoga, Zumba, something else, cardio. So we're thinking through that. We don't have a perfect answer to it, but the traditional gym class as we've known it is not going to happen next year. So gym class, unfortunately, things like automation and robotics, where kids were sharing all the little pieces, that won't happen, but instead we'll do computer science, and we'll do young adult literature, and we'll do art classes where kids don't have to share supplies. So we're going to try to mix in as many enrichments and physical activities we can, as well as work with our teachers around the mental health aspects, and really on each day, how can we take care of ourselves as people and as learners and as a community? And so we'll have access to counseling, groups, and outside resources as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Mendez is asking about kids that have asthma that can't wear masks all day long. If you have a medical reason for which your son or daughter is unable to wear a mask, if you could please email me and I will put you in touch with the school nurse, Ms. Golafai. She is the point person for all of those questions. And so I've just put my school email here. I'm sure you've gotten a million emails from me, but here in the chat box, and we'll make sure to get you in touch on that one. will there still be community meeting, virtual community meeting? We don't have enough space to have everybody 6 feet apart in the gym in the way that we used to. So we are going to be doing some virtual components to that.
Hi, I had a question
Yes.
regarding transportation for 7th through 12th grades,
Mhm.
where they will be taking the T to and from school. I know in the afternoons, my kids would have to wait for like the second or third bus because the
Yeah.
buses were so crowded. My concern is the morning time, like where we live, the bus to the school, it only runs every 30 minutes. So if that bus that they're taking is crowded, then they'll have to wait for the second one, which would get them to school just on time. But I would never allow them to take that second bus because if they were like a minute late, then they would be considered tardy. So
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
far as like will there be lax on that as far as like getting to school at a certain time?
Yeah, so we are looking into that, and so in 2 weeks, the next time Mayor Walsh convenes myself and the other leaders of charter schools in Boston, he's invited Chris Osgood, who's the chief of transportation for the city of Boston, who is the liaison to the Mbta, because I frankly have a lot of the same questions that you do about capacity on the buses. You know, one of the things Walsh said today is that BPS, the district, is planning a model where half their kids go to school 2 days a week and one day none of their kids go to school and then the other half go 2 days a week. So he is hopeful in doing that, actually, that the percentage of people taking the MBTA has, from a student perspective, been cut in half, and that will help some of the capacity. I understand his logic there, but I think we need more information. And there's been a lot of conversation and question about, will they run more buses more frequently, particularly in areas of high traffic for students. And so I think we'll try to get more information, and then I'll work with the principals and assistant principals and figure out how we're going to handle kind of that attendance policy. Because we certainly know that distancing and safe transport is key. And I know some other families have been talking about carpools with families, and some families have been talking about kids riding bikes from further distances than they might have previously. And I know people are really trying to get creative about this because I know that the busing is a challenge.
Yeah, it is a concern. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Nancy, so I know this is probably this question is probably a little far-fetched. However, I wanted to get an idea of what senior year looked like for the students who graduated this year, and if, you know, I mean, like I said, it's a little far-fetched to think into the future of what things may be like next year. But I mean, what was, you know, graduation and, you know, prom like for students this year? What recognition were they given, and, you know, for their hard work? And, I'm just kind of curious to know.
So we unfortunately did not have prom as planned, but we had a really lovely senior dinner that we did remotely. And so students and their families logged on from their home. They had dinner. We had awards. We had a video, student speakers. It was really lovely. And then we did graduation in 2 parts. We did an online graduation where our valedictorian spoke, our valedictorian, our faculty speaker, and every student. One of the honored traditions at Boston Prep is that every graduate gets to speak to the community for about 30 to 40 seconds. And so we videotaped students' remarks to their families. So we kept that tradition alive. And then 2 days later, we did a drive-through graduation at school with a stage and balloon art, pictures and signs. And so we really worked to make it as beautiful as we could. And we also did senior signing day, where students declared where they were going to college online, and our 8th grade step up ceremony as well And we actually had almost as many people sign on for our 8th grade step up ceremony as we did our graduation. So those rising nines were well represented there. So we've got great plans in for that. I hope we're not there in a year. And I will say that things is that we're really working with our alumni and their families and having town halls like this with them, talking about what is going to college look like. And we are hoping in the evenings next year to open parts of the school as sort of a campus center for our alums to come and learn, get tutoring, have access to food, because we know that they're facing real challenges with their learning afterwards. And so as many of you know, you sort of join the family at Boston Prep, and then we stay with you right through college graduation and beyond. And so we are really, really pleased that 90% of our college students who were enrolled in the spring stayed on track or accelerated or graduated. And so we had only about 10% of students who slowed down a little bit as a result of the pandemic. So we're just as committed to the kiddos to and through as we are the 6 through 12 students. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's important.
Hybrid or remote, but what if I want to send them for 2 days instead of 4? Oh, this is an interesting question, Ms. Duran. Maybe if you could get this question. We have a question about if 6th graders are in for 4 days and a family only wants to send the student for 2, have we thought about that option? And I don't know that we have thought about that. We've sort of thought either hybrid or remote. So let us do some thinking on that and circle back. Thank you for raising that question. Will there be detention? There will not be detention. And TBD on some of the after school activities. Frankly, just practically from detention, you can't have kiddos coming from 3 or 4 different rooms who might all have detention and then end up in one room together, right? The idea is to keep cohorts as separate as possible to support any contact tracing. So that will be a change for us next year. And we're excited for the time that we'll get to spend together in learning. And Ms. Gregory and Ms. Duran and team will have conversations with students and find creative ways to be able to have those honest conversations with kiddos throughout the year. Okay, it is 7:30, so let us maybe wrap tonight. I just want to thank everybody for coming, for your questions, for your feedback. As we mentioned, we'll send a summary tomorrow with a survey for you to weigh in. Which model do you like? Please encourage any families and friends that you have that weren't able to come tonight to weigh in. There'll also be the survey if you want to indicate if you want to go fully remote. And then we will pick back up again in 2 weeks. And we'll talk a lot more tangibly about like arrival and dismissal and lunch and sort of like what might the look and feel of the day-to-day be. Okay, so thank you all so much. Be well, stay cool, and we will talk to you all soon. And it's lovely to have some new families with us. It's so awesome to meet everybody. I'm looking forward to getting to know your kiddos too.